Luna by Universal Audio, a brand new DAW, making quite a splash out there in the audio world. I downloaded it yesterday because I have an Apollo Twin and a Mac, and they connect to one another with Thunderbolt. So if you don't have all three of those things, you can't get this just yet. But it is free for those users. Well, mostly free. Stuff like the Neve summing and some of the tape emulations and the virtual instruments, eventually you do have to pay for. When you download it, you get free trials of all of those kind of things. And much like the whole UA ecosystem, if you want the really good stuff, you got to pay the money for it. And that is a discussion for another day. But I want to try some things because I can get the workstation for free. I'm going to start by just showing you guys a kind of typical little tracking session for me, and I'll hopefully show off some of the features and some of the cool things you can do with it. The main thing that I like is because I've already got an Apollo Twin and I normally play my guitar through my Axe Effects and then connect those two units digitally, the Apollo and the Axe Effects that is, then I'm used to the console layout. And this is just kind of if you took console and it had a baby with Pro Tools and Studio One and Logic. There's a lot of kind of crossover. So if you're kind of familiar with any of those workstations, then this is mostly familiar. And at the moment, I'm just kind of running my guitar through these two inputs here. So if I turn on input monitoring on these tracks, I get my guitar with the usual kind of input monitoring situation on my Apollo, really, really low latency. And you're hearing a bunch of string noise because of the way that I am recording this, but I'll go through and track some stuff. So basically, let's get into some of the functions and some of the cool stuff. One thing that confused me in like the first 10 minutes I was using this was how to enter MIDI, because, you know, if I'm sitting around playing guitar, I come up with a riff, I immediately want to program some drums and some bass and lay that riff down. And I was trying to find the piano roll and find the keyboard shortcut, and I was reading on the internet, and I was starting to have that moment of, why is this so confusing? But it doesn't have to be that confusing, because basically you have the piano roll in the track. So you can go Command-Shift-N and create a new track, which kind of happens all over here. You create an instrument track, and then you just do this. Look, you can make the track bigger, and you can get the piano roll right there. And you can kind of use this little icon here to scroll up and down. And once you've programmed a few things, you can do this. You can hit the fold button. I really, really like this. It seems stupid at first, but it's like, there's all the things you're actually using. So if you're used to kind of programming a drum track, you know, you often have like 4 instances of a variation of a kick, and then all the different hi-hat articulations, all the different toms, all those kind of things. So this kind of greatly simplifies that. And I've pre-programmed a little drum track using SSD5 by Slate Drums. Sounds like this. And you can see if I hit this button here, I can get the velocities, and I can kind of change the velocities. And especially with the hi-hats, I can make those hi-hats just breathe a little bit. Alternatively, you can go onto a particular thing or select something and hold down Command, and then you can increase or decrease the velocity like that. So that's a nice little touch. That's one thing I really like already about entering MIDI. I've also got a bass track over here. I am using Eurobass for the bass tracks. Let's hear those two together. So there you go, pretty straightforward stuff. And I've already tracked a pair of rhythm guitars right here. I'm going to leave those muted for now because I'm going to go in and actually record some guitars really quickly. Again, if you're used to the whole console workflow with your UAD device, this totally makes sense. They've basically just taken console and upscaled it into a workstation. And where is my guitar sound? I don't have input monitoring on at the moment. So I'm going to do that. And I still can't hear my guitar. And why can't I do that? I've probably done something really, really stupid, like soloed these tracks. There you go. See? Teething problems, which are mostly me just being a moron. I should hear my guitar now. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And I'm going to just quickly track this riff. I'll show you a couple of the cool little things with the workflow when you're editing as well. And then normally I would quickly go and do a double of that track. Let's do that. Very, very straightforward stuff, you know, to kind of trim tracks. You can do that. If I want to make these bigger, again, I can just kind of drag the selections here, and zoom in is on T and R, just like Pro Tools, which I'm really happy about. And then we've got that, and then there's this cool little tool here. Where is it? I saw it before for creating a fade. Maybe I need to just kind of zoom in a little bit more. There it is. You click this button, and you can control the size of the little fade. How do I do that? Yes, there we go. And it fades both of them, which is awesome. So if I was to go through and, you know, kind of copy the bass and the drums over as well, then that riff would have a nice little fade on it here. I have no idea why the drums and bass didn't copy. Ah, that's why. Because I'd already copied them. Idiot. All right, let's hear them now with the little fade. We're getting there, guys. So probably a bit too much of a kind of fade there. I can just basically drag this and make it a lot tighter if I wanted to, or bring it back the other way. So I might just actually undo all of that because I don't need those sections of the riff copied over. Cool. All right, so, you know, kind of really basic stuff there. What else is kind of cool with this? I really just like that input monitoring system. Again, you know, if I'm trying to track something, I've got my guitar. And then if I don't want my guitar, then it's not there. It automates all the stuff. You don't have to go back and forth with console. So the MIDI editor with the whole kind of fold function there, and the piano roll in the track, and the ability to just kind of quickly resize tracks. One thing that I really like, and then the whole integration with console is another thing that I really like. So let's do this. Let's go over to the mix window now that I've got these tracks. And it's really easy to create a bus as well. You just create a new track and it will create a bus. I have a guitar bus over here. And what I have done is, you can see here on the tracks, there are selections for the kind of recording effects. If you want to do that kind of stuff, I've got instances of Oxide, which does come free with Luna, so that's kind of nice. So they're tape emulation. We'll hear that in a second. You've got your inserts, you've got your sends, and I've routed the outputs on the guitar down to this guitar bus for the 4 guitar tracks. So what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to unmute these quads that I did on here. So there's a double, and then I guess there's another set of doubles which aren't quite as loud. We'll just have a listen to what they do to the rhythm guitar sound. So they're just applying a little bit of beef in there. You can see for the bass sound, I have the LA2A by UAD, one of my favorite compressors in there, and I have their precision channel strip, just doing some really simple high and low pass on there, no actual post-processing or EQ on there. I have another reverb bus and a delay bus over here. So what I can do, and this is another cool thing, well, we'll get to that in a second. I'm kind of rambling. Let's hear this tape saturation, and then let's hear this Neve summing on these guitars. So I am just going to solo these guitar tracks and put Oxide on where I like it. That is a little bit how's it going. That's really kind of adding some character in there, which on its own might kind of sound a little bit crummy, but when you throw that into the mix with the drums and bass. And then I've basically got Oxide going on everything. It does have this kind of console-like workflow now, which I think is one of the big things that UA were touting when they launch this. Then if I wanted to kind of, on my guitar bus, add, let's do this. Let's add a little bit of reverb. I've already got a little bit of reverb sent on there, so that's kind of cool. You can see how these kind of sends work. You can also minimize this, so you've basically got a slightly easier workflow there with your cues and your outputs and that kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure there is a way to disable all the instances of the tape emulation at once. Again, really good integration in there for the both the workflow, and the fact this all integrates with the hardware is super cool. So we've got that. Now let's hear some of this Neve summing. This does not come free. I'm using this on the trial, but this is kind of the thing which is definitely tempting me the most to splash some cash on this. So I am just going to kick this in at the stock settings, and I'm going to play around with it a little bit. I'm actually just going to kind of loop this section of the riff here. So I'm going to play around with the Neve summing on this. I can't even really call it a mix. I've just kind of set some levels, and I haven't put a whole lot of effort into this. So if you're sitting there going, dude, this sucks, well, yeah, you know why. So there you go. As you can see, you've got that high and low impedance option there. I really like slamming it with the low impedance option and then compensating with the trim. Again, it's just kind of adding character in there. And I mean, I wouldn't necessarily use that much if I was kind of mixing this kind of thing. But if you do want that, and you do want that kind of glue on there, that's really cool. And we can do the same thing. So I'm going to leave that, and we can do the same thing on the master bus there as well. Let's hear that. So it's really, really cool in that aspect of you've got the summing, you've got all the tape emulation, and it's kind of integrated with the hardware. You'd have a laptop and your Apollo and kind of take all this kind of, what we would normally associate with a like kind of home studio or a pro studio, and take it kind of anywhere you like. And we've got all the buses and all the sends. UA have an excellent set of videos which you can go and check out all the kind of finer details of all of this. But that's kind of how I would just normally put a little demo together. You know, this is just one riff. If I was fleshing out a whole track, then having, the quad tracks on there and the reverbs and some delay and just a little bit of automation, just for fun would be kind of nice. But for just the purpose of this video, I'm doing that there. And as you can see, if you're used to UA console and you're already used to either Logic, Pro Tools, any of these DAWs out there, they all kind of do the same thing. The fact that this is free is really, really cool, but there is also a whole set of UA exclusive virtual instruments. So let's check some of those out now. Before we finish up, I want to take a quick look at some of the virtual instruments in Luna, including the Shape. I guess it's kind of like a module. It's kind of like Contact Player. It hosts these virtual instruments. So I've got an instance of Shape right here. If we click on it, it will bring up, I guess, the main menu. And at the moment, what I've got, well, I should have this Ravel LT piano in there, and I don't have any effects on it at all. I've just kind of programmed a quick little piano thing. Excuse my piano chops. I did quite a bit of quantizing there, and it sounds like this. Then I'm going to bring some of these other instruments in Shape and some of the effects in. I might go instrument effects, which is kind of cool. So let's have a listen to just the piano, then I'll bring in some strings, a choir, and a synth. So nothing super sophisticated there, but just by adding a couple of voices, you can see you can pad that out really quickly on each of these as well. If I say select the PWM lead module right here, I can use these controls here to essentially set the cutoffs for what the notes are reading. So that's kind of nice. If I just want to program in a block of instruments with chords and bass and melody, I can let certain instruments only play certain parts of those. I guess pretty standard stuff. So yeah, I would probably set that one there. And then as you can hear, I was bringing in reverb and delay. There's quite a few tone shaping options in there. There's compressors, there are harmonic effects like the filters, auto wahs, distortions. There's even a wave shaper in here. There's all the classic modulation effects you would expect. And there's plenty of delays, which I really like. I might put this ping pong delay on that one for now. So that's basically how Shape works. There's lots of options in there. I guess the hard sell for me with this is the idea of having to go and buy all these libraries only to use on this platform, whereas if you're using something like I mentioned earlier, like Contact, you can kind of use Contact in any DAW you like. So that's going to be interesting to see how much of a hard sell that is for UA. I mean, people love their interfaces and the exclusive plugins with it. I can't see why they won't get around this. And the sounds are really good. If we put it in a mix with some drums and bass, some really basic stuff, I used SSD 5 for the drums, and I'm using a Contact library for bass as well, this excellent Eurobass plugin. I really like that. So we've got all of this going on, and then what I will do is I will use some of the tape emulation and some of the Neve summing in there just to kind of, give it a little bit of character. So let's do that. I'm going to start off with just basically leveling everything out, and then I'll start adding some tape saturation and then the summing. I'm going to loop a section as well so that I don't have to keep hitting enter and record. Let's do that. So you can hear, you can actually add a decent amount of distortion and character using that. I've also got a bus set up here with the EMT 140. I love this plate reverb plugin, and it's really easy to send things to buses as well, as you can see kind of on the channel strip for each of these. And if you're used to the UAD console, again, it's quite familiar. You just kind of come down here, and then in your send section, you turn a knob. So I can add some reverb to all of these really quickly. Again, this is kind of super basic, nothing too special. You can get as sophisticated as you like with this. Let's do that. I really like that setting the low impedance on the Neve summing and then basically bringing the trim down. That adds a whole bunch of character there. So that's probably that, together with just using the Oxide plugin that comes free. I'm also trialing the Studio plugin, which sounds pretty good. It's kind of cool. You do get that, I guess, console style workflow on there, and I guess the summing is probably the most attractive thing in there, because think about it, you could have a little Apollo twin like I've got and a laptop, and you can basically record anywhere, but you can have this Neve style summing in there. So yeah, there's a really quick and super basic look at Luna by an idiot. So if you guys have any questions, I don't even know if I can answer them, because I don't know a whole bunch about this at the moment. I've just been playing around with it, and I have found it. There was obviously, like any DAW you try, you've got your one that you're used to, which for me is Pro Tools, and trying to learn another one can always be a bit of a challenge, but I actually found the conversion pretty quick here. I do miss a couple of little keyboard shortcuts, and there are a couple of things where I've noticed it is a little bit laggy at the moment, and the kind of whole authorization thing. There were some things when I first installed it that just didn't work, and then they worked today when I turned it on. So who knows? Hopefully it'll be really interesting to see where this is at in like 6, 12, 18 months. And it works. That's the most important thing. And if you've already got an Apollo interface like I do, there's kind of no reason not to have this and not to play around with it. It's really tempting to spend a bunch of money on the UA exclusive plugins, because they do sound great. But for now, I'm just going to spend some time with this, and I guess we'll see over time whether it becomes something that just kind of augments my setup. I mean, I could see myself using this if I, because I'm used to Pro Tools, do all the basic tracks and all the editing in there, and then migrate them over to Luna and use something like the Neve summing, because that's really, really cool. Or if it's something that I just end up using in kind of a creative context. So yeah. There you go. Like I said, any questions or comments, get them in the comments section as always, and I will see you guys real soon. Thanks for watching.